Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Module 3 of the CSBG Annual Report. For those who may not know me, I am Katie Kajowski, NASCASP Research Director. We are very excited that you were able to join us on this call today. We know that you are all very busy, and we appreciate you making time for this webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Attendees are on mute. If you need to ask questions during the webinar, please use the chat option on the menu on the webinar toolbar. The toolbar is located on the right-hand side of your screen. You see a text box where you can type a question. Please select all panelists to ensure that all of our presenters today can see your questions. Questions will be read aloud and answered during the Q&A portion of the webinar. To keep to our schedule, we may not have time for all of your questions. In this case, we will compile them into an FAQ following the webinar. The webinars will be recorded and will be posted to the NASCASP website. We have already posted a PDF version of today's presentation there. Today's webinar will be presented by Seth Hassett, Director of the Division of Community Assistance at the Office of Community Services, Jarl Crocker, Director of Training and Technical Assistance with the Community Action Partnership, Barbara Mooney, Director of the Association of Nationally Certified Roma Trainers and consultant with NASCASP, and myself. The agenda for today's webinar is to discuss Module 3 of the new CSBG Annual Report. This is the community level module. We will consider the elements of Module 3, which are Section A, the Community Initiative Status Form, Section B, the Community National Performance Indicators, and Section C, the Community Strategies. We will also discuss available tools and resources and forthcoming tools and resources. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Jarl to give a brief introduction from the partnership.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much, Katie. This is Jarl Crocker, Director of Training and Technical Assistance at the Community Action Partnership. On behalf of our CEO, Denise Harlow, just wanted to thank everyone for joining us here this afternoon. And I also wanted to thank our national partners, OCS, NASCASP, and ANSERT, for working so hard on this webinar series to prepare our network to fully implement Roma Next Generation and the annual report. Everyone should know that if you have any additional questions, if we're not able to answer your questions on this webinar, please feel more than free to contact any of us to give you any additional support that you might need. And again, thank you again for joining us here this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, and look forward to working with you on the annual report. So I will turn it back over to you, Katie.
Great. Thank you so much, Jarl. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Seth Hassett to get us started with the content today. Seth?
Okay, thank you, Katie, and good afternoon. Thank you all for joining this webinar, and we appreciate NASCASP's work to host this whole series of webinars and the work of the partnership to participate. We've just did a round of webinars on Module 4. We recently completed that round, and we found that some of the questions that were presented were as important as some of the content that was presented. So today we're going to be talking about Module 3, the community level measures for CSBG. A lot here is new, but as with other elements of our annual report, it's important to emphasize that community level strategies to be implemented are going to be locally determined, as will be the reporting elements. Important for CSBG because it provides an opportunity to document the community level work and the impact that is being made. There are options for reporting, and our hope is that we can capture the important community level work that is taking place across this national network. So I'm going to move forward to a bit of introduction to the performance management framework. And I'll just stage by talking about the multiple levels of the performance management framework. Many of you are familiar with elements of the new CSBG performance management framework. The most of the part farthest along is our work on organizational standards, which have been disseminated nationwide and adopted by states. And we've actually did a full year of report on our organizational standards. Those are the doc for our work as community action agencies, both and nonprofit. The performance management framework is not only about local standards, however, it is also about accountability at the state and federal levels for the key work that is done and make CSBG successful. And the phase of work is about results-oriented management and accountability. Roma has been around since 1993. However, we're now looking at Roma next generation, and our work is to update and implement an updated version of Roma. And it's all implemented. Here's a place that we get information is through our annual report, which is an updated and refined set of CG outcome measures through national performance indicators. Rotation is intended to demonstrate a commitment to outcomes. It's still about strengthening local solutions for local families and communities, not changed, and our goal is to improve both performance management and performance measurement. And the whole is about continuous quality improvement across this system to build capacity in the long term, to take a perspective on the changes that we're trying to make happen for individuals, families, and communities. So all fits together in a that we collect at each level feeds the next level. The bedrock of our work in terms of determining local community needs is the community needs assessment. Each community action agency also develops its own strategic plan, which you look at the direction the agency is going, and agency that CSBG develops an annual community action plan. All of that helps feed the state CSBG plan, and each year we now have a link to an annual report, which us report to Chris about achievements, challenge, and new directions for CSBG. The national action, many of you have seen different iterations of the theory of change that was developed for to kind of the overall framework and the overall how all these pieces fit together for the performance framework. And this is the latest version of this, and it is, as we're referring to it, close to final. What we're doing now is working to make sure that the image is financed and otherwise, which means it's available. We want to publish it on our website. We need to make sure that it can be read by people with disabilities and other accessible in that way. But this outlines the multiple levels of the performance management framework. The foundation, of course, is the national network of over 1,000 high-performing community action agencies, and all of this supports a set of core principles, a performance management framework that looks both at how well the network operates and the difference that we're making both for individuals and communities. Each identifies its own services and strategies, and our nationwide are focused on individuals and families, communities, and engagement of people with low income in opportunities in communities. So this is a way of showing how all pieces fit together, again, for this locally determined model. Again, today we're going to be focusing primarily on Module 3, the community level indicators, and this is new content in terms of what will be provided. As you'll be hearing today, there are lots of options for how communities can use Module 3, and this is all about using this as a way to report goals in communities where there are identified efforts to impact not just for individuals and families, but community level change to affect the conditions and for low-income people. So I will hand over to our next presenter.
So much, Seth. This is Jarl here at the partnership, giving us a brief overview of community level work and its connection with the work of our network. So next slide. So I think it's important to emphasize a couple of issues. We know from feedback in the run-up to the implementation of Roma Next Generation and the annual report, there was some network anxiety about reporting on community level indicators and community level work. So we just want to begin by stressing that if your agency doesn't do community level work, you don't have to report on it. That said, if your agency is doing community level work, the new annual report provides you even better tools for making sure you're telling the story of what your agency is doing from the individual to the family to the community level. It's important to stress that community level work is really in the DNA of community action. And in the same way that the Roma framework in general encourages us to look at things holistically at the individual and the family level, the neighborhood level, and the agency level, and the community level, it's important to, as you think about your agency's overall strategy, at least consider the potential community level impact your agency and its key partners can make. And so as you see on the screen, CSBG Act talks about in its purpose goals that the purpose of our network is to provide assistance to state and local communities through a network of community action agencies and other neighborhood-based organizations for the reduction of poverty, the revitalization of low-income communities, and the empowerment of low-income families and individuals, including the greater use of innovative and effective community-based approaches to attacking the causes and effects of poverty and community breakdown. I think that just reemphasizes the importance of trying to address the causes and conditions of poverty at as many levels as your agency is reasonably able to take on. We understand not all agencies necessarily have the resources to do community level work. There's also some flexibility. You don't have to be the backbone organization or one heading up the effort. You can simply participate as a broader collaborative or coalition of other stakeholders that are working at the community level, and I think that's one thing to think about as we go through these slides. Module 3, again, is a renewal of our network's understanding of the necessity of working towards community change as well as individual and family outcomes. And Module 3 creates the reporting space for agencies who are tackling complex community level issues. So again, we really think the annual report in its current form really gives you the tools you need to tell the story of the work that you are doing at the community level, if that's something in which your agency is engaged. Next. So what you see here is just simply a description of the three sections in Module 3 of the annual report. Section A is the Community Initiative Status Form. Section B are the Community National Performance Indicators, and Section C are the Community Strategies, and we'll go over each section in the course of this webinar. One slide back. What you see here is a crosswalk between the new annual report and the old IS survey. And I think one of the best things about these slides, and one of the ways they'll help you in your agencies, is they provide you with that crosswalk between some of the changes and updates that have occurred between the IS report and the new annual report. And so this shows you the crosswalk between the three sections that I just described, and the way the old IS survey was organized. And as you'll see in the upcoming slides, all of the changes, both the updates and the new indicators, the new strategies, are all marked clearly on the slide. So I think the best way to use this presentation is back at your agency, do that crosswalk, look at what you're reporting on currently related to any community level activities, and you can see the changes, the new strategies you could report on, probably some new MPIs that you might be able to report on. So you're sure you're collecting the right kind of data to report on it. I'll now turn it back over for the rest of the presentation. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's Barbara Mooney, and I'm going to talk a little bit about start with the community needs assessment. We know that when we get the assessment data, we find a lot of things phrased as community level needs. Some things on the screen, the community lacks living wage jobs, there's need for more affordable housing, we have an employment rate, and low high school graduation rate, particularly in the school districts that serves our customers with low income. So those are the needs that have been identified at that community level. These needs, we're asking how might the Community Action Agency be involved, or how might the CSBG network be involved in changes in the community conditions. And this concept is not new. The way we address it is. So asking the questions, will there be an increase in living wage jobs, or more affordable housing units available? Will there be an increase in the high school graduation rate income from students that are from low-income families? How do these things happen? What will change at the community level? The thing that we need to think about is what strategies might we be engaged in? What are agencies doing now to help make these kinds of changes in their communities? Would they want to do this? Why would it be important for them to be involved in this kind of response? What may be the most appropriate way to address the identified needs? Individual responses may help. Some people may get jobs, some families may find housing, some teens may graduate, but it's not going to turn the curve on the situations, the causes and conditions that are facing the entire community. And so the agency may think of a broader strategy, and one of the things they'll think about is who they're going to partner with to engage in these, to face these wicked problems that usually involves multiple organizations. The report that we're talking about today really does a number of things that you need to be aware of. It collects information about these initiatives in a separate place. It showcases the connection between initiatives and outcomes. It allows information to be reported over time. And if it is reported over time, it's auto-populated where information is carried over from. There's some auto-calculations of that will help figure out your results. One of the things that we expect is that most of the community action agencies will have only a handful of initiatives that are at this community level work or community strategies that would produce community level change. So what community level work are reported? This is the question that you'll be looking at as you're doing your planning and then even as you're doing reporting. You'll be reporting on initiatives that have community level outcomes that were planned and may have been achieved within the fiscal year, within the reporting year. you'll be reporting on initiatives that were started, continued, or completed. So those are the projects that you'll be reporting on. You'll be talking about initiatives that the agency has done alone or that they've done in partnership with others. The things that will not be reported are the kind of community involvement, community engagement activities that do not have a specific community level outcome that they're pursuing. So community meetings, maybe some community activities, they're not designed to have a community level outcome, so those would not be included. So this is a question. The first part that we're going to talk about is the community initiative status form. It looks complicated and time consuming. So what does that mean to the local agencies? Is it going to take a lot of time? But because these are only initiatives that have community level outcomes, and as we said before, it's expected that agencies will only have a few initiatives each year. There will be drop-down menus and auto-population that will make it all quickly, so that you can generate quickly. And agencies will have this information ready and complete the form usually once a year, depending upon the state reporting requirements and also on the activities that they're engaged in. What we've had is, will all local agencies be required to report in Module 3? As in community action, the local agencies are required to use their community needs assessment to their state plan and to say, this is how we're going to respond to the unique local causes and conditions of poverty, and that the agency would defend its program decisions based on that assessment and identification of outcomes. So those agencies who have identified community level needs and outcomes and strategies will be reporting on in Module 3. Agency has not identified that as a need for their agency, they will not be reporting in Module 3. Community initiative status form look like? What does it do? How can it be incorporated into your reporting and management process? Snapshot of the first part of the report form or status form. You'll give the initiative a name and say where you are in the initiative. Now, it won't necessarily be year one because some initiatives you've already engaged in them, and so you may pick year 2 or 3 as appropriate, and that will get you into the system, and then from years following, you'll have the auto population from the first year that you enter. You'll be a need, you'll be providing a narrative on the problem and a narrative about what you hope to achieve and what the agenda is. And then you'll pick a community domain, one of the domains in the that are in the theory of change in the annual report, and you will pick a national performance indicator at the community level. And then you will identify your community. And this is an important piece to be able to say, this is the area that we will be working on that we expect to see changes. It'd be a neighborhood, a school district, or so on. How long do you think this project will last? It's a part of the planning process to project the time frame. And what kind of initiative is this? Are you going to be partnering with other organizations? Are you the core, the backbone organization? And you can see as we're looking at this information that this information that might be entered once during the year. You will not be updating this regularly, so the reporting burden is minimized for most of the year. The rest of that page, the last few are to, if you've identified partners, I've said you're in a partnership, you identify the partners, you select a strategy from the drop down, and say what your progress is. Are there outcomes that you want to report or no outcomes? Interim outcomes, or they're the final outcomes? And then you're not only going to say what the outcome was, but what changed because of the outcome. In item 13, this will be information about the scope of the project and what impact it's had. You'll be saying which of the national performance indicators you'll report on. And is it final or is it an initial, or where in the status? And in some cases, it might be that the initiative ended, or that it's early, or that it's inactive. Those are all choices that you'll be able to make, or that it's completed but still delivering value. Learned is another narrative that will help us to understand what that you've learned from the process. The NPIs are identified by domain. They're the same domains that are used throughout the annual report. Just a couple more pieces. The NPIs are a menu of options, which means that there's no agency that's going to be reporting all of the NPIs. You'll be just picking those that are appropriate to the outcomes from your project. If you do anything, there is another option that will allow you to enter something. Please look at the NPIs and consider them clearly. They really are looking for community level change and not individual change. So, as I mentioned earlier, individuals may get a job. Have you increased the number of jobs or the percent of people that are employed? That's a community level discussion, and we want to make sure that it's a planned effort with strategies and outcomes, that it's just adding up the number of individuals. And we have some examples coming up that will help to clarify that. All kinds of indicators, counts of change and rates of change that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. And we understand that these may take multiple years to cover, and so that option is available in this part of the report. A reminder on the next page that community NPAs are not just about adding up the claims and saying that that's a community change. It really has to be about developing strategies and outcomes that are planned and are really at the community level. So here's a quick example. If you're developing a new initiative, the count of the asset that you developed will be the community level NPI, but the number of customers who attend the service and achieve outcomes would be reported in the family level NPIs in Module 4. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about the National Performance Indicator.
Great. Thanks, Barbara. This is Katie Kajowski again. We are going to take a deeper look at what is included in the Community National Performance Indicators. These are the employment indicators. As you can see, we have both counts of changes and rates of change, as Barbara mentioned. In the counts of change, there are 4 columns to report in. The first column is the identified community, and will auto-populate from your community initiative status form. Second column is the target, and third column are the actual results. The target and the actual results will be reported for each program year. So enter the target, the number of counts of change that you expect to change, and actual results at the end of that program period and how many jobs were actually created. Core is the performance target accuracy column, and this will auto-populate, and we will discuss the calculations that are embedded in those cells later. The rates of change section has 7 columns. The first column for the rates of change is the identified community, which will auto-populate from that community initiative status form. The second column is the baseline. That's your baseline rate for the employment indicators. That would be an example of the baseline unemployment rate. The target in the third column is what you anticipate changing the rate to. 4 is the expected percent change from baseline. That will also auto-populate formulas embedded in those cells. Column 5 are the actual results. At the end of the program year, you will enter the rate, the unemployment rate, as it stands at that point in time. Column 6 is the actual percent change from the baseline, and that will auto-populate, as well as column 7, the performance target accuracy. That will also auto-populate. These indicators are under domain 1, the employment indicators. Some of the examples that we just discussed, number of jobs created, job opportunities maintained, or in rates of change, the percent decrease in the unemployment rate or the underemployment rate. The screenshots that you see here and that you will see on the next few slides come from the CSBG annotated annual report, and we will talk later in the webinar about where you can locate this document. It's a great crosswalk tool that you use as you're looking at these indicators and thinking about how to implement this in your organization. Next slide. This next set of indicators are education and cognitive development indicators. These fall under the second domain. Right here we can see that these are the counts of change. For example, the number of accessible and affordable early childhood or preschool education assets or resources added to the community. Some of these indicators are similar to what you may have seen in NPI 6.3 or 2.1, and we also have new indicators. Next slide. Rates of change for the education and cognitive development indicators. These are all new indicators. Some examples in this set of indicators are the percent increase of children in identified community who are kindergarten ready, or the percent of children who are reading at basic reading level or basic math level. Again, all of these are new indicators, and these are the rates of change under the second domain. Slide, please. Asset building indicators. These are the counts of change under the third domain, infrastructure and asset building. These indicators expand on what you may have seen in NPI 2.2A through D. For example, the number of new accessible assets or resources created in the identified community. Maybe you were involved in building a park or community garden or some type of transportation initiative. Here you'll also report the number of existing assets that were made accessible in the identified community. Rates of change under the infrastructure and asset building domain 3 again. These are all new indicators. Examples in rates of change are percent decrease of abandoned or neglected buildings, or decrease in emergency response time, or predatory lenders and or lending practices. Again, the menu of options under Module 3. Next. Indicators. This is the fourth domain. These are, you can see both the counts of change and the rates of change. Some of the counts of change expand on what you may have been reporting in NPI 2.1 and are new. An example is the number of safe and affordable housing units developed in the identified community. Or in the rates of change, maybe you're working on decreasing the rate of homelessness or the foreclosure rate. They're all under the housing indicators, the fourth domain. Right. Social behavioral indicators, the fifth domain. Here you can see both counts of change and rates of change. Some of the counts of change may look familiar and may have been what you have been reporting on under 2.2. An example is the number of accessible and affordable physical health assets, or public safety assets, or affordable healthy food resources created or added to the community. Some rates of change that you may be working on could be the percent decrease in infant mortality rate, or decreasing the childhood obesity rate, or the adult obesity rate, both falling under health and social behavioral indicators. Additional rates of change options under health and social behavioral indicators. These are all new indicators. Here are listed the percent decrease in the teen pregnancy rate, or the child abuse rate, or perhaps you're working on decreasing the recidivism rate. All under health and social behavioral indicators, and these are all new options. Civic engagement and community involvement indicators. We have two different sets of these, one falling under the National Goal 2, which communities where people with low incomes live are healthy and offer economic opportunity. This set of rates of change are aligned with that second national goal. Some of these we have made familiar from NPI 2.3 or 3.2, or we're seeing in section F. An example is the percent increase of donated time to support a CSBG eligible entity's delivery of services, or participating in public hearings, policy forums, community planning. Things of that nature would be reported here in this goal. Next slide. These are civic engagement and community involvement indicators related to Goal 3. The National Goal 3 is people low incomes are engaged and active in building opportunities in communities. May be familiar to what you've seen in NPI 3.1 or 3.2. An example is the percent increase of people with low incomes who support the CSBG eligible entities' delivery of service or implementation of strategies to address conditions of poverty. So, next slide. In each of the domains and in each section, we also have the option for you to report other NPIs. Perhaps there's work that you're doing and outcomes you're seeking to achieve that aren't listed in that menu of options. And that's great, and we provided you with an opportunity to report those things. We want to hear about the things that you're doing that aren't included or specifically called out in this new annual report. So again, each indicator for counts of change and for rates of change, there is an option to report NPIs. So now going to take a look at the community strategies, and I'm going to turn it over to Jarl.
Thanks, Katie, and we're going to review the community strategies that you can list under each domain. I think these are some of the most direct and straightforward slides on today's webinar. So if we can advance it, one slide, there we go. So you'll see the community strategies list for your employment strategies. And again, this is a helpful slide because it shows you where the NPIs have been expanded on from the previous IS survey, and also where new strategies have been added. So you can see the option to list other employment strategies down there at the bottom, and also employment legislative changes in addition to the expansion on the previous NPIs as indicated. So these slides are helpful for doing that crosswalk that I suggested earlier. So look at what you've been reporting under the IS. You can see what you can report on with the new annual report. But of course, these are relatively straightforward. You're just simply reporting here which strategies your community level initiative is employing. Next slide. Here are the domain strategies for education and cognitive development. And again, you see that expansion on the old IS, and that you can also add in an education and cognitive development legislative changes strategy. So what you're seeing here is some additional level of detail that you can add, an expansion of the different types of strategies that you can report, and of course, if you have other strategies that aren't covered, you can always choose that option there at the bottom. So this is a really flexible list to make sure that we're accurately accounting for the strategies that our agencies are employing with their community level work. Next slide. Here are the strategies for infrastructure and asset building, so a relatively long list. And again, crosswalk with the old IS report showing you what's been expanded on and those additional strategies that you can now report. Here are the housing strategies, so again, relatively straightforward. You'll recognize many of these from the IS. But of course, there has been some updating and some addition of those new strategies that you can now report on, and also that flexibility to report any other strategies that aren't captured by these lists. Next. The health and social behavioral development strategy. So again, a relatively straightforward list with that crosswalk. So if you are doing those health and social behavioral development strategies, would encourage you to make sure that you're using this full list, capturing all of the strategies that your community level work is employing, and making sure you add any strategies that are covered by the list in any of these domains. Next. Here are the community support strategies. Again, relatively straightforward list you can see with those off hours, non-traditional hours of child care development, transportation system development, transportation services coordination and support, community support policy changes, community support legislative changes, and those additional community support strategies. Next slide. Here are the emergency management strategies. Again, a relatively straightforward list, so we won't walk through every single strategy. But again, good to see what you can report on, what's been added here, and also thinking through if you do need to use that option to report on strategies that aren't listed in this section. And I will now turn it over to Barbara and Katie to talk about examples.
Thanks, Al. It's Barbara here. And we just have a couple quick examples to try to make this all make a little bit more sense of a specific example. So the first example is the agency in its community needs assessment process identified that housing stock in their community did not meet energy efficiency standards. There are many questions embedded in that need statement. What's the community? Was it a neighborhood? Is it how would you define it? What energy efficiency standards? You might be saying, my area doesn't have that. Well, you might have different ways of identifying your need. This is just an example so that you'll see this is a way that someone might identify a community level need. Outcome is improvement in housing stock, and it could be reported both as account and rate of change, which we'll see here in a minute. One of the strategies that would help to create this initiative that addresses housing is that the Community Action Agency is going to operate a weatherization program. So where do these get reported in Module 3? Would have a community initiative status form in which you would name the initiative and you would identify the partners and the time frame and so on, as I walked through before. There might be two different kinds of community NPIs that you'd report on. You'd report on the number of safe and affordable housing units maintained or improved through weatherization or other rehab efforts, or do a write-in, the percent increase of energy efficiency homes in the community. You've identified that your need was there was a low percent of energy efficient homes. You may be able to show the increase in the percent of energy efficient homes. And here's your strategy. You select the strategy rehabilitation or weatherization of housing stock. What you would not be reporting on is the number of individuals in a household who improved their health and safety due to improvements in their home. That would be reported in Module 4 under the family level NPIs, 4G, you wouldn't adhere the number of households with improved energy efficiency, because that would be reported as a family level outcome in 4H in the next section. Next example is about education. An agency identified that the community they're working in has a lower than average % of low-income children who are ready to enter kindergarten. Now, again, they would have a way to measure that. They would be able to show the relationship between the kindergarten readiness of the children from families with low income and the average, the rate readiness. And their outcome would be that their children are ready to enter kindergarten. That's what they want to see changed, both a count and a rate. And what would the initiative be? The initiative would be a Preschool for All campaign, and the Community Action Agency would work with a coalition to implement this initiative. Now, where are those reported? Create a community initiative status form with all of the basic information to create your profile, community initiative, and then you would report the number of accessible and affordable early childhood or preschool education assets or resources added to the community. So as part of your Preschool for All campaign, you might be creating these opportunities. Or you might use the % increase of children who are identified in the community ready for kindergarten. And strategy in this case was a Preschool for All campaign. What you would not report on is the family level indicators, the number of children who demonstrated skills for school readiness. That would be family NPI 2B, or there are other appropriate family level NPIs that have to do with childhood skill development in Module 4. And what if an agency identifies an outcome that's not listed, they need that doesn't match up with any of the outcomes that are identified in the NPIs? What do you do about that? Write-ins come into place. They would identify the information, they would create the profile on the community initiative status form, then they would choose other NPI, and they would choose an appropriate domain. They would either select a strategy or write in the strategy in one of the other boxes under the appropriate domain. So there's a lot of opportunity to gather information through this report to help us improve the reporting of the community level work. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Katie for the discussion about the formula.
Thank you, Barbara. During the development and the review of this new CSB annual report, we had a lot of questions about what are those auto-populated formulas in the cells that we discussed when we were talking about the rates of change and counts of change. So that has, in order to answer this question, the guidance of a statistician to confirm the formulas. We wanted to ensure the calculations embedded in those forms were accurate presentations of data, and we also wanted to get some better language around that data and to confirm whether the data points should be entered as whole numbers, decimals, or percentages. Next slide. We'll first take a look at the counts of change. This is probably the most similar to what you've been already working with in the IS report. This is an example using employment indicators. In this example, we're looking at the number of jobs created to increase opportunities for people with low incomes in the identified community. So column 1, we've put in a city. In column 2, we're targeting that we think we're going to create 25 jobs. Column 3, at the end of the program period, we've created 20 jobs. In column 4 will auto-populate 80% with performance target accuracy. In red on your screen, you can see what that formula is. Actual results divided by the target results. Counts of change. Next. So we'll take a look at what's involved in these calculations. Also using employment indicators as an example for the change. In this case, looking at the percent decrease of the unemployment rate. We're also using the city as our identified community. For planning purposes, we enter our baseline in column 2. The employment rate in this community is 5% when the initiative began. The target, column 3, the CA is expecting that they can reduce that unemployment rate to 3%. Column 4 will auto-populate with that first formula you see on your screen. The target minus the baseline divided by the baseline. That'll populate as 40%. They're going to decrease the employment rate by 40%. At the year, the actual unemployment rate was 4%. That's what you see in column 5, those actual results. And column 6 and 7 will auto-populate with the additional formulas. That's the actual change from baseline is a decrease of 20%. And in this case, the performance accuracy, the percent of the target reduction achieved is 50%. You don't have to report on both rates of change and counts of change. It's either or. In some cases, it may make sense to report in both places, but not all the time. And finally, we recognize that in columns 2, 3, and 5, that you see a number sign, and we're looking for percentages there. So we expect to change the form that presents as a percentage. Next slide. Take a look at some of the resources and tools that we have available to you. First tool is the new CSBG annual report numbering. We created a new numbering scheme that with the idea of the NPIs in mind. So currently we have NPI 1.1, 1.2, and then we have letters following the 1.1 or 1.2 to further identify each individual indicator. So we've done a similar type of work with this new numbering scheme. All of the community level indicators we're naming CNPI. The numbers follow domain. So in the example, these are employment indicators. So we've 1, so CNPI 1, CNPI 2 for education, so forth. For module 4, we've labeled these FNPIs and the same type of numbering scheme where the number aligns with the domain and is further identified by an additional letter. The website, and we'll show you where in just a moment. The next tool is the annotated CSBG annual report, which you've seen a lot of during this webinar. This takes the annual report and identifies exactly where things are located or are brand new, located in IS or are brand new. This is also on our website, and we'll show that to you in just a moment as well. And then we have a series of crosswalks. We have a crosswalk that starts with the CSBIS and then identifies similar type of language that's found in the new annual report. Also have crosswalks that start with the new annual report and then line these new indicators with what you're familiar with in the CSBG-IS and also how it relates to the organizational standards. And we have a high-level crosswalk that takes a look at the annual report and directly compares it to the CSBG-IS. Next slide. All these tools and more can be found on our website on the left-hand side of the screen under CSBG, the CSBG annual report. Next slide. Scroll down on the page, you'll see a list of tools. This is where the final OMB cleared annual report lives, along with modules 2 through 4, Excel forms, the reporting timelines, reporting periods, presentations. This particular presentation, the previous ones on module 4, and the crosswalks here as well. also have a ROBA Next Generation page. This is where you can locate the theory of change and other tools and resources directly related to ROBA Next Generation. And additional tools and resources that are coming this summer are additional crosswalks that take a look at LIHEAP, Head Start, WIOA, and weatherization. This webinar series that we're just wrapping up today that focuses on modules 3 and 4. And we're working on an instruction manual and a lexicon, all of which will be released shortly. We also have the CSBG T&TA Center. This is a joint project between NASCAS and the partnership. And this is where tools and resources, the CSBG. On the screen, you can see that the final CSBG annual report is located on this website. We post presentations and recordings and the tools that we have on this website. As a reminder, if you have not entered questions into chat and you do have questions, please enter those into the chat. You can contact myself, Lauren Cook, Jackie Orr, of course, the partnership, SCS with any questions that you have about this new annual report, and we will work to get those answered quickly. So let's take a look at some of the questions that we've received today. Kyle?
Hi. Okay, we got a couple questions here. When do I fill out the community initiative status form? Barbara, do you think you can take that one?
Sure. Whenever you have a community level initiative. So it could be one that you have done prior to this new annual report, or it might be one that you've just started in the current year. So you'll be completing it as you begin the initiative, or as you continue the initiative this year.
We have another one here. When is the first report due for modules 2, 3, and 4? Seth, do you think you can take this one?
Kyle, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, data collection for modules 2, 3, and 4 will begin in fiscal year 18. So depending on your reporting period in your state, that might have started, the data collection may have started in July as a month, may start in October 17, or if you're a January through December state, data collection will begin January 1 of 2018, if that's fiscal year 18. Reporting won't take place until March 31st of 2019, and that's when the new annual report is due.
Katie, another good question here. When filling out the community initiative status form, are we reporting on the initiatives funded by CSBG funding or other funding received by the agency? Barbara, do you think you can take this one?
Yeah, sure. As with everything else in the annual report, looking at what the Community Action Agency is doing rather than just what's funded by CSBG. So you would be reporting on any of the agency's community level work.
You, another one here. Do I have to report on both the count change and the rates of change? Kate, think you can take this one?
I can. You-report up makes sense. All indicators are optional in terms of what you select to report. As I mentioned earlier, Some initiatives, it may make sense to only report on counts of change. Other initiatives, it may make sense to only report on the rate of change. And in some cases, you might report in both areas based on the initiative and your community needs assessment.
Thank you. And the last question we have here is about the lessons learned section. Is it expected to be answered regardless of stage of the initiative? For example, if we're just starting the initiative? Barbara, this was the section that you presented on, so you think you could take this question?
Yes, thanks, Kyle. Absolutely, everyone has lessons that they learned, regardless of where they are in the initiative. Lessons to be learned from seeing the initiative. How did you decide who the partners would be, and what did you find out about gathering those partners together? How did you think about what strategies you would do, and so on? And as you progress through the initiative, you would have lots of lessons that you learned about how things came together, what the barriers were, and so to just be able to provide those lessons. And then, of course, at the end, looking back, having that backward look at what you've done would provide an opportunity for additional lessons learned. So any time in the initiative is appropriate to add some lessons learned.
And I think that's all we have for questions.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have additional questions or need any assistance on the annual report, feel free to contact any of us. We are here to help you in implementation. And we appreciate your time today. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you.